The council chamber on Veritas Prime Station was massive. Hundreds of alien species filled the seats that curved around the central speaking platform. Ambassador Jiwon Park stood at that platform now, her hands clasped behind her back as she faced the Galactic Council. She wore the simple gray uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. Her face showed no emotion. Above her, Counselor Vrath loomed on his elevated seat. He was 15 feet tall with 4 arms and a body that looked like a giant mantis. His species, the Vrathi, had ruled the Hegemony Coalition for 3,000 years. He looked down at Jiwon with what passed for contempt among his kind. The Hegemony has made its position clear, Vrath said. His voice boomed through translation devices. Humanity will surrender its outer colonies within 90 days. You will submit to Hegemony governance. This is not negotiable. Jiwon looked up at him. And if we refuse? Vrath's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter. Then you will be removed. Your species expanded too quickly. You claimed systems without permission. You are dangerous primitives who do not understand galactic law. We claimed uninhabited systems, Jiwon said calmly. Systems your species showed no interest in for centuries. We broke no laws. You exist without our approval, another counselor said. This one was Drex, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish wrapped in golden light. That is enough. Behind Jiwon, Captain Sungmin Choi stepped forward. He was young for a Terran intelligence officer, barely 30 years old. He carried a data tablet that glowed with information. Council members, we need to discuss the military buildup we've detected. Vrath waved one of his 4 arms dismissively. Your primitive sensors detect our fleet movements, so what? We count 400 warships gathering at your staging points, Sungmin said. His voice was steady despite the hostile atmosphere. That's more ships than have been mobilized in this sector in 200 years. You're preparing for invasion. The council chamber filled with sounds, clicks, whistles, electronic tones. The translation devices rendered it all as laughter. Actual laughter, invasion. Vrath leaned forward. No, human. This is pest control. Your species has 70 combat vessels, poorly armed mining ships and converted cargo haulers. We have 400 warships designed for conquest. Each one could destroy your entire fleet alone. This will not be a war. It will be an extermination. Jiwon felt her jaw tighten. She forced herself to remain calm. You're making a mistake. The only mistake was allowing your species to leave your birth world, Vrath said. We were too lenient, too patient. Now we correct this error. Then let me be clear, Jiwon said. She stepped forward, looking up at the massive alien counselor. If you attack humanity, you will regret it. We're not the easy target you think we are. More laughter rippled through the chamber. Even Drex, who had seemed more reasonable, made a sound that translated as amusement. You have no concept of warfare, Vrath said. Your species achieved space travel only 200 years ago. You've had minor border skirmishes with pirates and criminals. You've never faced a real military power. We have conquered 16 species. We have fought wars that lasted centuries. What can you possibly do against us? Jiwon looked around the chamber. She saw the representatives of dozens of species. Some looked curious. Most looked contemptuous. A few looked sympathetic but said nothing. No one would help humanity. The hegemony was too powerful. No one wanted to make enemies of them. She turned back to Vrath. We've fought ourselves for thousands of years. Do you understand what that means? Before we reached the stars, we spent millennia perfecting the art of killing each other. We had 2 world wars that killed hundreds of millions. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We learned every possible way to hurt, to break, to destroy. And we did all of this to ourselves. Ancient history, Vrath said. You are civilized now, soft, weak. No, Jiwon said quietly. We just stopped fighting each other. We never forgot how. She pulled up her own data tablet. Images appeared on the holographic displays throughout the chamber. Scenes from Earth's history. Trenches filled with bodies, cities reduced to ash, mushroom clouds rising over destroyed lands, ships sinking into dark oceans, soldiers fighting in snow and jungles and deserts and ruined buildings. This is what we did to ourselves, Jiwon said. Imagine what we'll do to you. Vrath stared at the images. For a moment, something flickered in his alien eyes. Was it doubt? Uncertainty? Then it vanished, replaced by anger. You try to frighten us with pictures of your primitive barbarism, he said. It proves our point. You are violent savages. You must be controlled. Then you're not listening, Jiwon said. She shut off the display. I'm giving you a warning. I'm telling you what will happen if you attack us. We will unite. We will mobilize, and we will make you understand why our species survived itself. 90 days, Vrath said. He stood up to his full height, towering over the chamber. Surrender your colonies, submit to hegemony rule, or face extinction. The Galactic Council has spoken. The session ended. Ji-Wan walked out of the chamber with Sung-Min following her. They moved through the corridors of Veritas Prime in silence. Only when they reached the docking bay where the Terran shuttle waited did Sung-Min speak. They're really going to do it, he said. They're going to attack. Yes, Ji-Wan said. She climbed into the shuttle. Contact Admiral Daewon Kim. Tell him to begin Phase 1. Phase 1? Ji-Wan strapped into her seat. We prepare for war. The shuttle detached from Veritas Prime and began its journey back to Earth. Inside, Ji-Wan closed her eyes. She thought about what was coming. The hegemony had no idea what they were starting. They saw humanity as primitives, as easy prey. They looked at the small Terran defense fleet and saw weakness. They didn't understand. Humanity hadn't built a massive military because they didn't need one. Every human colony, every station, every ship was designed to convert from civilian to military use in hours. It was built into everything they made, because humanity remembered. They remembered what it was like to face extinction. They remembered how to fight total war. The hegemony was about to learn. 90 days. That's what Vrath had given them. It wasn't much time, but it would be enough. Admiral Daewon Kim was already mobilizing the fleet. Engineers were already pulling weapons from storage. Soldiers were already training. Humanity was waking up, and when humanity woke up, the galaxy would burn. Ji-Wan opened her eyes and looked out the shuttle window. She could see the stars. Somewhere out there, the hegemony fleet was gathering. 400 warships, each one powerful enough to crack a planet, against humanity's 70 ships. The hegemony thought those numbers meant victory. They were about to learn they were wrong. Admiral Daewon Kim stood in the command center beneath Geneva. The room was dark except for the glow of dozens of holographic displays. Each one showed a different part of human space. Ships moving, stations activating, weapons coming online. He watched it all with the calm expression of a man who had prepared for this moment his entire life. Report, he said. Commander Tae Yang Song stepped forward. She was short and thin, but her eyes were sharp. She ran the Experimental Weapons Division, the program that officially didn't exist. All hidden assets are activating on schedule. The hegemony scouts are watching our colonies. They see exactly what we want them to see. Good. Daewon pulled up a star map. Red dots marked hegemony fleet positions. Blue dots marked human assets. The red outnumbered the blue by more than 5 to 1. What about the mining stations? Transformed and ready, Tae Yang said with a small smile. The hegemony thinks they're watching us panic. They have no idea those mining stations have been weapons platforms all along. Daewon nodded. Humanity had learned long ago that the best weapon was the one your enemy didn't know about. Every mining station in the outer colonies looked peaceful. Solar panels, processing equipment, storage tanks. But inside each one were railguns, missile batteries, and point defense systems. They'd been built that way from the start. Just waiting. The door opened and Fleet Admiral Jae Sung-yoon entered. He was older than Daewon, with gray hair and a face marked by decades of service. He commanded all Terran military forces. Behind him came Colonel Min-ji Han, who led the Terran Marine Corps. She was muscular and moved like a predator. The United Earth government has given full authorization, Jae-sung said. We have 90 days. They want to know if that's enough. It's more than enough, Daewon said. We don't need 90 days to prepare. We've been preparing for 200 years. We need 90 days to make the hegemony think we're weak. Min-ji pulled up tactical displays. My Marines are ready for boarding operations. We've been training for zero-gravity combat since the Academy. The hegemony species don't have that experience. Most of them evolved in low-gravity or aquatic environments. Close-quarters fighting will shock them. What about the civilian fleet? Jae-sung asked. Every registered ship is reporting for conversion, Tae Yang said. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even luxury yachts. We're installing weapons, armor, and military sensors. The hegemony knows we're doing it. They think we're desperate. They don't realize this was always the plan. Daewon pulled up images from hegemony space. Their scouts were observing human colonies, watching the preparations. He could see the reports they were sending back. Humans panicking, humans scrambling to build defenses, humans showing fear. All of it was theater. Lieutenant Bo Shin is running the pilot training program, Daewon said.
How's that progressing?
Ahead of schedule, Minji answered. She's teaching them tactics the hegemony has never seen. Kamikaze drones, ramming maneuvers, suicide runs, things that would never occur to a species that values individual survival above victory. Because they don't understand us, Jae-sung said quietly. They think they do, but they don't. They see our reluctance to fight as weakness. They don't realize it's restraint. Daewon thought about the Galactic Council, about Vrath's contempt, about the way they laughed at humanity's warnings. The galaxy had been relatively peaceful for thousands of years. Minor conflicts, yes. Small wars between species over resources or territory, but nothing like what humanity had done to itself. The galaxy had evolved past total war. They'd reached a point where conflicts were limited, civilized, controlled. They had rules about warfare, agreements about acceptable targets, limits on acceptable casualties. Humanity had no such limits, not when survival was at stake. Show me the Q ships, Daewon said. Tae-yang pulled up new images, ships that looked like ordinary cargo vessels, fat, slow, unarmed. But inside, hidden behind false bulkheads and disguised as cargo containers, were enough weapons to fight a small war. Humanity had built dozens of them. The hegemony scouts had catalogued them all as civilian vessels. Worthless in combat, they were wrong. Engineer Hyunwoo Kang finished the defense platform deployment last week, Tae-yang said. 60 platforms positioned throughout the outer colonies. They look like communications relays. The hegemony mapped them all. They have no idea each one has enough firepower to destroy a cruiser. What about the nanite swarms? Jae-sung asked. Tae-yang's smile grew wider. Ready for deployment. We've tested them on our own decommissioned ships. They work perfectly. Self-replicating machines that disable enemy systems by disassembling them at the molecular level. The hegemony has nothing like this. The concept will terrify them. Good, Daewon said. Fear is a weapon too. Minji pulled up personnel reports. Ground forces are at full readiness. We've got 3 million Marines ready for boarding actions and another 10 million reserves. We've been training them for this scenario since childhood. Every human knows how to fight. It's in our education, our culture, our history. Daewon thought about that. Every human child learned about the world wars, about the conflicts that had nearly destroyed their species. They learned what humanity was capable of, not to celebrate it, but to remember it, to never forget what they could become if they had to. The hegemony didn't have that. Their children learned about peace, about cooperation, about civilization. They'd forgotten how to be monsters. Humanity never forgot. 60 days until the deadline, Jae-sung said. What's the play? Daewon pulled up the strategic map. We let them come. We let them think they're winning. We draw them into our space, and then we show them what real war looks like. They're bringing 400 ships, Minji said. Even with all our hidden assets, we're outnumbered. Numbers don't win wars, Daewon said. Will does. Strategy does. Ruthlessness does. The hegemony has numbers. We have everything else. He pulled up images from humanity's past. The Battle of Thermopylae, the Siege of Stalingrad, the Tet Offensive, D-Day, countless others. Battles where one side was outnumbered but won anyway. Battles where determination and tactical brilliance overcame superior force. We send them one more warning, Daewon said. 30 days from now. Give them a chance to back down. They won't take it, Jae-sung said. No, Daewon agreed. But we gave them the chance. When this is over, when the galaxy asks what happened, we can say we tried. We warned them. They didn't listen. Tae-yang pulled up long-range scans. The hegemony fleet is almost fully assembled. I count 398 ships now. 2 more joining within the week. They're massive. Their flagship alone could destroy a city. Then we'll destroy it first, Minji said simply. Daewon looked at his officers. These people were the best humanity had. They'd trained for years, decades. They knew human military history better than any civilian. They understood what was about to happen, the cost it would demand, the brutality it would require. This won't be clean, Daewon said. This won't be civilized. The hegemony thinks warfare is about honor and rules. We're going to show them the truth. War is about winning. Nothing else matters. What about afterwards?
Jae-sung asked.
When we win, what happens to humanity's place in the galaxy? They'll fear us, Daewon said. They'll understand what we are, what we've always been, and they'll think twice before threatening us again. He dismissed the meeting. His officers left to their duties. Day 1 remained alone in the command center, watching the displays, watching the hegemony fleet grow, watching humanity prepare. Somewhere in space, G1 was returning to Earth. She'd delivered the warning, done everything diplomacy could do. Now it was his turn. Now the military would speak, and when the military spoke, the galaxy would listen. Day 1 pulled up one final image. It was the Terran defense fleet, 70 ships, small compared to the hegemony, but each one crewed by humans who understood war, who'd studied it, who'd inherited thousands of years of brutal, bloody experience. 60 days left. The countdown had begun. The hegemony fleet arrived at Proxima Colony at exactly 0600 hours, 90 days after the ultimatum. 400 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Each ship was massive, built for intimidation as much as combat. They were covered in weapons, bristling with cannons and missile batteries. Their hulls gleamed with energy shields that could withstand nuclear strikes. At the center was the flagship, Eternal Dominion. It was 3 miles long, large enough to carry 50,000 crew members. On the bridge, Fleet Commander Theric stood before the main viewport. He was Vrathi like Counselor Vrath, tall and mantis-like. His 4 arms moved across control panels as he surveyed the human colony ahead. Proxima Colony orbited a small red star. The colony itself was built on 3 moons and 2 space stations. Population: 3 million humans. Defending them were 60 Terran warships. Tiny compared to the hegemony fleet. Insignificant. Open communications, Theric ordered. Let's end this quickly. The view screen activated. Admiral Day 1 Kim appeared. He was aboard the Terran flagship, Indomitable. Behind him, the bridge was calm. Crew members worked at their stations without panic. Day 1 himself looked almost bored. "This is Fleet Commander Theric of the Hegemony Coalition," Theric said. His voice was formal, ceremonial. "You have refused our lawful demands. You have rejected galactic authority. Therefore, we are here to remove you by force. Surrender now, and you will be allowed to evacuate. Resist, and you will be destroyed." Day 1 stared at him for a long moment. Then he said, "You were warned." The transmission cut. Theric felt irritation ripple through his body. These humans, so stubborn, so foolish. Did they really think they could fight? "All ships, attack formation," Theric ordered. "Target the military vessels first. Disable them quickly. We'll force a surrender within the hour." The hegemony fleet moved forward. 400 ships against 60. The outcome was obvious. This would barely qualify as a battle. It was an execution. The Terran ships began to retreat. They pulled back from the colony, engines burning hard. They were running. Of course they were running. What else could they do? "Pursue," Theric ordered. "Don't let them escape." The hegemony fleet accelerated. They chased the fleeing human ships, spreading out to surround them. This was going exactly as planned. The humans would run, they would be caught, and then they would surrender. Simple, clean, professional. Tactical Officer Sujin Kwan watched from the bridge of Indomitable. She was young, barely 25, but she'd been born for this moment. Her entire life had been preparation, training, study, learning every battle humanity had ever fought, understanding every tactic, every strategy, every dirty trick that had ever won a war. "Range?" she asked calmly. "Hegemony fleet is now inside the engagement zone," a sensor officer reported. "They've taken the bait." "Activate the defense network," Sujin said. Throughout Proxima system, things that had looked like peaceful mining stations suddenly changed. Panels fell away. Hidden weapons emerged. Railguns, missile batteries, point defense systems. Dozens of platforms that had been cataloged by hegemony scouts as civilian infrastructure revealed their true nature. They opened fire. On the Eternal Dominion, alarms shrieked. Theric watched in shock as the space around his fleet exploded with weapons fire. Missiles streaked in from all directions. Railgun rounds moved at a significant fraction of light speed. Energy beams lanced through shields. "Where is this coming from?" Tharix demanded. "The mining stations," his tactical officer screamed. "They're weapons platforms." "Impossible, we scanned them. They hid the weapons, disguised them as civilian equipment." The hegemony fleet tried to respond, but they were caught in a crossfire. The hidden platforms had been positioned perfectly. Overlapping fields of fire, no blind spots, no safe zones. The hegemony ships began taking damage. Then the civilian ships attacked. What the hegemony had catalogued as cargo haulers and passenger liners suddenly deployed weapons. Missile tubes emerged from fake cargo holds. Gun ports opened in reinforced hulls. Laser arrays activated. The Q ships had revealed themselves, and they weren't alone. From behind the moons of Proxima, hundreds of small craft launched. Fighters, bombers, and something else. Drones. Thousands of automated drones that flew straight at the hegemony ships with no regard for survival. Because they didn't need to survive. They just needed to explode. Kamikaze drones. Lieutenant Bo-Ra Shin led the first fighter squadron. She was 22 years old and had been flying combat simulators since she was 10. She'd trained against every possible scenario. Now she put that training to use. All wings. Focus on command ships, she broadcast. Take out their leadership. Make them panic. Her squadron screamed through space at speeds that would kill most alien pilots. Humans could handle higher G-forces. Their bodies were tougher. Evolution on a heavy gravity world had made them resilient in ways the hegemony species weren't. Bo-Ra targeted a hegemony cruiser. She launched missiles, then pulled her fighter through a turn that exceeded 8 Gs. Behind her, the cruiser's point defense tried to track her movements. It couldn't. She was too fast, too agile. Her missiles hit the cruiser's bridge. The ship went dark. "Target destroyed," she reported. Moving to next. Throughout the fleet, human pilots executed the same brutal efficiency. They didn't fight fair. They didn't give the hegemony a chance. They struck fast, struck hard, and moved on. No mercy, no hesitation. The Terran defense fleet stopped retreating. The 60 warships turned and opened fire at close range. They'd drawn the hegemony fleet exactly where they wanted them. Caught between the hidden platforms, the Q ships, the fighter squadrons, and now the main fleet. Surrounded, Sergeant Woojin Park led the first boarding action. His combat shuttle attached to a damaged hegemony destroyer. Cutting torches burned through the hull. His squad of Marines poured inside, moving through zero gravity like they'd been born in it. The hegemony crew didn't know how to fight in these conditions. They fumbled in the weightlessness. They couldn't aim properly. They couldn't move effectively. Woojin's Marines killed them efficiently and moved deeper into the ship. Bridge secured, Woojin reported, taking control of ship systems. Within minutes, they'd captured the destroyer. Human technicians began reprogramming it, turning its weapons against other hegemony ships. The same thing was happening throughout the battle. Damaged hegemony vessels were being boarded and captured, then turned into weapons against their own fleet. Tharix watched his fleet die. In the span of 30 minutes, 400 ships had been reduced to less than 300. Human tactics were like nothing he'd ever seen. They used weapons that didn't care about survival. They fought at ranges and speeds that should have been impossible. They boarded ships and captured them instead of destroying them. They turned everything into a weapon. This wasn't warfare. This was butchery. "Retreat," Tharix ordered. "All ships, retreat now." The hegemony fleet tried to pull back, but the humans weren't done. They pursued, hammering the retreating ships with missiles and railgun fire. The drones continued their suicide runs. The fighters chased down stragglers. By the time the hegemony fleet escaped to faster-than-light speed, they'd lost 160 ships. Almost half their strength. The mighty invasion force that was supposed to crush humanity in an hour had been shattered. The Terran fleet held their position. They'd lost 35 ships. Casualties were in the thousands. But they'd won. Against 5-to-1 odds, they'd won. On Indomitable, Day One watched the hegemony fleet flee. Around him, his crew was celebrating, cheering, shouting. They'd done it. They'd proven that humanity could fight, but Day One didn't celebrate. He pulled up the casualty reports. 35 ships, 4,000 dead, twice that many wounded. Those were people. humans who'd died following his orders. "Sir?" Sujin said quietly. "We won." "Yes," Daewon said. But this was just the first battle. He pulled up long-range scans. The hegemony had more ships, more resources. They could replace their losses. The question was whether they would, whether they'd learned their lesson, or whether they'd double down on stupidity. Deep in hegemony space, Tharix sent his report to Counselor Vrath. His hands shook as he transmitted the data, the casualty numbers, the tactical analysis, the truth. "They fight like demons," Tharix said. "They don't care about individual survival. They use tactics we've never seen, weapons we never imagined. I've fought in 20 campaigns. I've never seen anything like this. These humans aren't civilized warriors, they're monsters." Vrath's response came quickly. "Unacceptable losses, but acceptable for the strategic situation. We're sending reinforcements. 200 additional ships. You will crush them." Tharix stared at the message. More ships, more attacks, more death. The hegemony still didn't understand. The humans had tried to warn them. Fleet Admiral Jae Sung-yoon stood before the holographic display in Earth's command center. The map showed all of known space. Blue markers indicated human territory. Red markers showed the hegemony coalition. For the past month, the red markers had been retreating. The blue markers had been advancing. Humanity wasn't defending anymore. They were attacking. "Status report," Jae-sung said. Captain Yoonji Nam appeared on the screen. She commanded the 3rd Strike Fleet, currently deep in hegemony space. Behind her, stars streaked past as her ships traveled at faster-than-light speed. "We've hit 3 supply depots in the last week. Destroyed 200 cargo ships. The hegemony supply chain is collapsing. Casualties? Minimal. We're not staying to fight. Hit and run. Destroy the target and leave before reinforcements arrive." Jae-sung nodded. It was working. The strategy was simple. Don't defend, attack. Make the enemy feel vulnerable. Force them to protect their own territory instead of threatening yours. Commander Ji-hoon Baek reported next. He ran the guerrilla operations, small, fast ships that struck everywhere and nowhere. "We've mined their major shipping routes, destroyed their communication relays. They can't coordinate their fleet movements anymore. We're making them blind and deaf." "What about the political situation?" Intelligence agent Insu Lee answered that one. She was operating behind enemy lines deep in hegemony territory. She'd infiltrated their communications networks, their media, their government systems. "The coalition is fracturing. Member species are questioning the war. Some are talking about withdrawing their support. Counselor Drex is leading a peace faction. Keep pushing them," Jae-sung said. "I want the coalition broken before we're done." The truth was simple. Humanity couldn't win a war of attrition. The hegemony had more ships, more resources, more soldiers. If this became a grinding, long-term conflict, humanity would eventually lose. So they had to win fast. Win decisively. Break the enemy's will to fight before numbers could overcome strategy. And they had to make it brutal. Colonel Minji Han's Marines were boarding enemy ships across a dozen systems. They'd learned that close-quarters combat terrified the hegemony species. Most of them had evolved in low-gravity or aquatic environments. Fighting in enclosed spaces in zero gravity, with the constant threat of hull breaches and decompression, it was a nightmare for them. For humans, it was Tuesday. "We need to hit something big," Jae-sung said. "Something that will shock them. Make them understand they can't win." Commander Tae Yang-song stepped forward. She'd been quiet during the briefing, but now she pulled up a star chart. One system glowed brighter than the others. Carthax. It's their primary industrial center. 60% of their military production happens there. Shipyards, weapons factories, research facilities, everything. "It'll be heavily defended," Jae-sung said. "Yes, but if we destroy it, we cripple their war effort. They can't replace losses without those facilities." Jae-sung studied the system. Carthax was deep in hegemony space. Getting there would be dangerous. The battle would be worse, but the strategic value was undeniable. "Prepare the fleet," he said. "We're going to Carthax." 3 days later, the human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Carthax system. They'd brought everything. Every available warship. Every fighter. Every weapon they could deploy. This was the decisive battle. Win here and the war was essentially over. Lose and humanity might not recover. Admiral Daewon Kim stood on the bridge of Indomitable. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. They'd been fighting for 2 months straight. They were exhausted, but they were also confident. They'd beaten the hegemony at every turn. They'd proven they could win. Enemy fleet detected, Sujin reported. I count 240 ships. They know we're coming. Of course they do, Daewon said. We wanted them to know. We want them scared. The hegemony fleet moved to intercept. They'd learned from Proxima. They stayed in tight formation. They kept their distance from anything that might be a hidden weapon. They were cautious, careful, but they couldn't avoid this fight. Carthex was too important. Deploy the nanite swarms, Daewon ordered. Tae Yang had been waiting for this moment. The nanite swarms were her masterpiece. Self-replicating machines smaller than a grain of sand, each one programmed to disassemble enemy ships at the molecular level. And once deployed, they would multiply exponentially. The swarms launched from specially equipped ships. They looked like nothing on sensors. Just clouds of particles, debris. The hegemony ignored them. That was their mistake. The nanites reached the first hegemony ship and went to work. They landed on the hull and began taking it apart, atom by atom, molecule by molecule, and as they worked, they used the raw materials to build more nanites. The swarm grew, spread, infected more ships. On the hegemony flagship, alarms screamed. Theryx watched in horror as his ships began to simply fall apart. Hull plating separated. Systems failed. Entire sections of ships disintegrated into clouds of atoms. What is this? He demanded. Unknown weapon, his tactical officer reported. It's eating our ships. And it's spreading. Every ship it touches becomes a vector for more contamination. How do we stop it? I don't know. Panic spread through the hegemony fleet. Ships tried to pull away from infected vessels, but it was too late. The nanites had spread too far, too fast. Within an hour, 30 hegemony ships had been reduced to floating debris fields, and the human fleet hadn't fired a single conventional weapon. Now, Daewon said quietly, the Terran fleet opened fire, missiles, railguns, energy weapons, everything at once. The hegemony fleet was in chaos, trying to deal with the nanite swarms and the conventional attack at the same time. They couldn't coordinate, couldn't respond effectively. Bora's fighter squadron struck the shipyards directly. They dodged through defensive fire, moving at speeds and angles that should have been impossible. Her missiles hit construction facilities, leaving them burning and broken. Wu Jin's Marines boarded a hegemony dreadnought. They fought through the corridors, killing anyone who resisted, capturing anyone who surrendered. Within 30 minutes, they'd taken the ship. Within an hour, they'd turned its weapons on the hegemony fleet. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the hegemony had lost 180 ships. The industrial facilities at Carthex were destroyed. Decades of infrastructure reduced to wreckage. The hegemony's military production capacity was crippled. Humanity lost 42 ships. 5,000 dead. It was the highest casualty count of the war so far. But they'd won. Decisively, absolutely, Theryx survived. His flagship managed to escape before the nanites reached it. But most of his fleet was gone. Most of the coalition's military power was destroyed or captured. He sent an emergency transmission to Counselor Vrath. We cannot win this war, Theryx said. His voice was empty. Defeated. The humans have weapons we can't counter. Tactics we can't predict. They fight with a ruthlessness that defies understanding. Every time we engage them, we lose. Every system we try to hold, they take. They're not fighting to defend themselves anymore. They're destroying us. Systematically, efficiently, without mercy. He paused, staring at the ruined Carthex system behind him. We need to surrender, while we still have enough ships to protect our core worlds. Before they come for those too. Vrath's response took hours to arrive. When it did, Theryx could hear the change in his voice. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something else, fear. The council is divided, Vrath said. Some want to continue fighting. Others want peace. I'm trying to maintain control, but what? Counselor Drex is calling for my removal. He says I started an unwinnable war. He says the humans warned us and we didn't listen. Half the council supports him. The coalition is falling apart. Theryx closed his eyes. What are your orders? Try to hold our core systems. I'm opening a diplomatic channel to the humans. Trying to negotiate, but I don't know if they'll listen. The transmission ended. Theryx looked at what remained of his fleet. 60 ships. That's all that was left of the mighty hegemony war machine. 60 ships against a human fleet that seemed to grow stronger with every battle. Because the humans weren't just defeating the hegemony. They were capturing ships, studying technology, learning, adapting. Every battle made them more dangerous. Somewhere in human space, Ji-won Park received Vrath's diplomatic message. She read it carefully. It was desperate, pleading, offering negotiations, offering to discuss terms. She thought about the ultimatum they'd delivered 90 days ago. The contempt in Vrath's voice. The laughter of the Galactic Council. The certainty that humanity would be crushed. She composed her response. Short, simple, direct. You didn't listen to our warnings. Now pay the price. She sent the message and closed the channel. The war would continue, not because humanity wanted it, but because the hegemony needed to learn, needed to understand, needed to remember this lesson for generations to come. Don't threaten humanity. Don't underestimate them. Don't think you can bully them into submission, because humanity remembers how to fight, and when they fight to win. The Galactic Council met in emergency session 3 months after the war began. The chamber on Veritas Prime looked different now. Empty seats marked where species had withdrawn from the coalition. The remaining members sat in silence, watching the holographic displays that showed the tactical situation. Red markers indicated hegemony territory. There were fewer of them now. Blue markers showed human forces. They were everywhere, deep in hegemony space, surrounding core worlds, blockading trade routes. Humanity wasn't just winning the war. They were dominating it. Counselor Drex floated at the center of the chamber. The golden light around his body pulsed with agitation. Counselor Vrath is no longer fit to lead. His arrogance started this war. His refusal to listen to warnings brought us to the edge of extinction. I call for his immediate removal. Vrath sat in his elevated seat, but he looked smaller now. Diminished. His forearms hung limp. His mandibles barely moved when he spoke. I accept responsibility for my mistakes. The chamber fell silent. Vrath admitting error was unprecedented. For 3,000 years, the Vrathi had led the hegemony with absolute confidence. Now their leader sat broken before the council. The humans have destroyed 60% of our military fleet, Drex continued. They've crippled our industrial capacity. They've fractured our alliance. 6 species have withdrawn from the coalition. Others are negotiating separate peace agreements. If we don't surrender now, there may be nothing left to surrender with. What terms would they demand? Another counselor asked. We don't know, Drex said. Ambassador Park has refused all communication. She told us to pay the price. That's all. Outside the station, the human fleet waited. Admiral Daewon Kim had brought 200 warships. They sat in formation, weapons powered but not aimed. A demonstration of force. A reminder. The hegemony could see them, could count them, could understand what would happen if the council refused to surrender. Unindomitable, Daewon watched the station through the viewport. Beside him stood Fleet Admiral Jae Sung-yoon, who had come from Earth for this moment, and Ambassador Ji-won Park, who would speak for humanity one final time. They're ready to surrender, Ji-won said. Drex sent a private message. Vrath has been removed from power. The council will accept any terms we offer. What terms do we want? Jae-sung asked. Ji-won pulled up a document. I've been working on this with Premier Seo Yoon-jung and the United Earth government. Here's what we're demanding. She displayed the terms on the screen. Daewon read them carefully. They were harsh. Very harsh. But not genocidal. Not cruel for cruelty's sake. Just enough to ensure the hegemony could never threaten humanity again. These will cripple them for a generation, Daewon said. Yes, Ji-won agreed. That's the point. We're not trying to destroy them. We're teaching them a lesson they'll never forget. The council sent word that they were ready. Ji-won, Jae-sung, and Daewon took a shuttle to Veritas Prime. They entered the council chamber with an escort of Marines. Sergeant Woo-jin Park and his squad walked behind them, weapons ready. Just in case, the chamber was mostly empty. Only the core council members remained. Drex floated at the center. Vrath sat to the side, no longer in a position of authority. Other counselors watched with expressions that ranged from fear to resignation. Ambassador Park, Drex said, we are prepared to discuss terms of surrender. There's nothing to discuss, Ji-won said. She stood at the speaking platform. exactly where she'd stood 3 months ago when Vrath had delivered his ultimatum. I'm here to tell you what will happen. You will accept it, or we will continue this war until your coalition no longer exists. She pulled up the document. The terms appeared on displays throughout the chamber. First, the hegemony will pay reparations to humanity. The amount will equal the cost of this war plus 50%. We calculate that at approximately 12 trillion credits. You have 10 years to pay. Gasps echoed through the chamber. 12 trillion credits was an enormous sum, but Drex simply nodded. Acceptable. Second, all territorial claims on human space are withdrawn permanently. You will sign treaties recognizing our sovereignty over every system we currently occupy. You will never challenge our expansion again. Acceptable. Third, the hegemony military will be reduced to 20% of its current size. The remaining ships will be used only for defensive purposes. Any offensive action against any species will be considered a violation of this treaty. This caused more reaction. 20% was a massive reduction. It would leave the hegemony barely able to defend their own territory. But again, Drex nodded. Acceptable. Fourth, human observers will be placed in your government. They will have full access to all council proceedings and military operations. They will report to Earth. If we detect any preparation for future aggression, we will consider it a violation of this treaty. How long will these observers remain? 20 years. After that, we'll reevaluate. Drex was silent for a moment. Then he said, acceptable. Jiwan continued through the remaining terms. Non-aggression pacts, technology sharing agreements, trade restrictions. Each term was designed to ensure the hegemony would never again be in a position to threaten humanity. And each term was accepted. Finally, Jiwan reached the end of the document. She looked around the chamber at the alien faces watching her. You delivered an ultimatum to us 3 months ago. You told us to surrender or be destroyed. We told you that you were making a mistake. We warned you what would happen if you attacked us. You laughed at our warnings. You dismissed us as primitives. You thought you understood warfare. You thought you were civilized and we were barbarians. She paused. The chamber was completely silent. You were wrong about everything. We're not primitives. We're a species that spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. We didn't become civilized because we evolved past violence. We became civilized because we chose to direct that violence outward instead of inward. And when you threatened us, you gave us a target. She pulled up images from the war, battles, destroyed ships, captured territory, the systematic dismantling of the hegemony military machine. This is what real warfare looks like. Not your civilized conflicts with rules and limits. Total war, strategic war. War where victory is the only thing that matters. You wanted to fight us. We showed you what that meant. Vrath spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, broken. We underestimated you. Yes, Jiwan said. You did. And now you'll spend the next generation recovering from that mistake. These terms are not negotiable. Accept them or we continue fighting until your coalition is dust. Drex looked at the other counselors. One by one they nodded. He turned back to Jiwan.
We accept.
All terms, unconditionally. Good, Jiwan said. She pulled up the treaty document. Sign here. The surrender was formalized within hours. The hegemony coalition officially capitulated to humanity. The war was over. Humanity had won. On Indomitable, Day-Wan watched the signing ceremony through a live feed. Around him, his crew was celebrating, cheering, crying. 3 months of constant combat had ended. They'd survived. They'd won. But Day-Wan thought about the casualties. 7,000 dead, 12,000 wounded, 97 ships destroyed. Those were the costs. People who would never go home. Families who would never be whole again. Was it worth it? Jae-sung asked quietly. He stood beside Day-Wan, watching the same feed. We didn't have a choice, Day-Wan said. They gave us an ultimatum. Surrender or fight. We fought, we won. Now the galaxy knows what we're capable of. They fear us now. Yes. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe fear will keep them from threatening us again. 5 years passed. The galaxy had changed. The hegemony coalition still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. Reduced military. Constant human oversight. The member species that had once feared them now saw them as weakened, vulnerable. Other species had learned the lesson. Don't threaten humanity. Don't underestimate them. Don't start wars you can't win. Admiral Daewon Kim now commanded a joint human-alien defense force. Species that had once been neutral or even hostile now requested human protection. Human military tactics were studied in every military academy in the galaxy. Human strategic doctrine became the standard. Colonel Minji Han trained alien soldiers in human combat techniques. They learned about boarding actions, zero-gravity fighting, close-quarters combat, things they'd never needed before. Things humanity had perfected over millennia. Lieutenant Bo Rashin commanded a mixed-species fighter squadron. She taught alien pilots how to fly aggressively, how to take risks, how to push their machines and themselves to the limit. Commander Tae Yang-song's research division had shifted to peaceful applications. The technology that had won the war was now being used to build, to create, to improve life across human space. Fleet Admiral Jae Sung-yoon had retired. He'd written a memoir about the war. It became required reading at every military institution in the galaxy. The title was simple: They Didn't Listen. Ambassador Ji-won Park stood before a new galactic council. This one was different. More species, more voices, and humanity had a permanent seat, not because they'd conquered anyone, but because they'd proven they could, and chose not to. We didn't want this war, Ji-won said. She addressed the assembled representatives from across the galaxy. We tried diplomacy. We issued warnings.